Welcome to the E-commerce Badassery podcast, the place for scrappy entrepreneurs who want to learn actionable steps and strategies to grow the traffic, sales, and profit in your e-commerce business. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster, a 20-year retail veteran and former brick-and-mortar boutique owner who spent 3 years as the only employee of a 7-figure online store. That shit was crazy. I know exactly how it feels to do all the things, and I'm sharing everything I learned the hard way so you don't have to. I may have started this business by accident, but supporting badass bosses like you lights me the fuck up, and I am so stoked to see you grow. Are you ready, babe? Let's roll. Welcome back to the E-commerce Badassery podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster. Well, friends, today's episode is not one I intended to release this week. My original plan was to field questions inside my programs as they came up. But since there has been so much confusion over the last 2 weeks about the impending tariffs, our economy, etc., I wanted to get ahead of this conversation. At the end of the day, we cannot predict what is going to happen and what the result of these changes will be. But we can control how we respond, and that's what I want to focus on today. Instead of getting stuck in what-if mode, I want you to focus on what you have power over. If there's one thing I know for sure, it's that businesses that stay agile, pay attention to their numbers, double down on their core strengths, are the ones who get through uncertain times with a little bit less stress. So let's talk about why you shouldn't panic about your business in 2025. Your current level of anxiety is directly related to how in tune you are with what's happening in our government and around the world right now. This whole conversation started in the lounge when one of my students asked about the future of Meta because it's removing fact-checking, and a whole ton of users were saying they were leaving all of Meta's platforms. And she was wondering what that could potentially mean for ads. And this is a fair question. I 100% understand why she asked it. And as someone who encourages business owners to stop thinking of organic social media as free, because it's not free, and to just put money behind your content instead, I was thinking about this too. And that's just one example of the conversations people are having on the internet right now that might be causing anxiety for small business owners. But here's the truth. The majority of Americans are not paying nearly as close attention as you are. And when it comes to political things, that is always the case. So really, there's two things happening here. One, you're in a bit of an echo chamber, as we all are. So it makes you think the beliefs and the actions of those people, for example, leaving the Meta platform, are more universal than it actually is. Two, because you are so engaged with the news and you're surrounded by like-minded people, for example, other small business owners who are also super engaged with the news, it gives you this illusion that everyone else is as tuned in as you are. In reality, though, most people are just going through the motions of day-to-day life. They're going to work, carting their kids around, doing laundry, sitting their ass on the couch watching Netflix. There are approximately 175 million individuals in the U.S. between the ages of 25 and 64. And there are 81 million ages 35 to 54, which is the biggest consumer of non-essential goods. Looking specifically at Facebook, and this is just a general calculation to give you a point of reference, please don't quote me on these numbers, but there are approximately 62 million people in the US ages 35 to 54 on Facebook alone. Even if 10 million of them left, that's still a significant portion of the total U.S. consumer base. My point is, there are a lot of people in the U.S., and there are a lot of potential customers for your product-based business. If you're still not convinced, let me remind you, I opened a brick-and-mortar clothing boutique in 2009 after the financial crisis in a town where a lot of my customers were married to men who worked in finance. There were a lot of layoffs in that industry. Granted, my absolute best customer was married to a bankruptcy lawyer who was having his best year ever, But at the end of the day, I generated $650,000 in revenue in my first year during the worst financial crisis in my lifetime. Another business owner, a lounge member who responded to the original poster that started this whole conversation, and I'm paraphrasing, she said, "I've been around a long time." She's had her business for over 30 years and also started it during a recession. She said, ultimately, while a good economy is of course helpful to grow a business, there are always people ready, willing, and able to spend money through all of the ups and downs. Now that we've established why hitting the panic button isn't necessary, let's do a quick run through of what's been happening, just in case you missed it. Now, I'm not going to go super deep into any of this. There are plenty of resources out there and people who do cover these things more in depth. I would say just vary your sources so you're getting a balanced view of what's happening. But in the last 2 weeks, the Trump administration has issued a flurry of executive orders, rolled back DEI initiatives, removed pages from government websites, halted communication from certain agencies, withdrawn us from worldwide organizations, fired civil servants while attempting to push out others, froze money from the federal government, started ICE raids, and came into conflict with our allies. But like I said to my lounge member, none of this is surprising, and I expect the first 100 days of his administration to continue this way. He's making good on the promises he made during the campaign, and overwhelming the news feed has always been his MO. It's been the same way essentially since he came down the escalator the first time and announced he was running. While as of right now, tariffs seem to be on hold for at least 30 days. Side note, I had to come back and edit this portion of the podcast because it's changed since I initially recorded. I still want to talk about one item that was part of the initial executive order because I don't think it got very much attention, and that's something called the de minimis exemption. This is essentially a dollar threshold under which a shipment from another country is exempt from duties and taxes when it enters the U.S. That threshold is $800. So any package being shipped into the U.S. from another country, if it's less than $800 in value, the importer or customer receiving that package does not have to pay any taxes or duties on it. There are exceptions for certain industries, but for the most part, under $800 exempt. And that is true whether you are a business buying materials or a customer buying a finished product. And other countries have this as well, though their thresholds are much lower than ours. So shipments going into Canada, I think it's 150 if it's from the US, 40 from other countries. In the EU, the threshold is 150. The initial intention of this was to reduce the burden at customs and facilitate trade. There have been discussions about lowering this threshold for a while due to concerns about it being abused. For example, people will do split shipments just to stay under that $800 threshold, giving an unfair advantage to foreign sellers and for the trafficking of fentanyl. Under Trump's executive order, that exemption would have been removed for Canada, Mexico, and China. So at the time of this updated recording, there are no tariffs being implemented, last I heard. But what are some potential outcomes for product-based business owners if they are? Ultimately, prices will go up. That is the effect of tariffs. If that happens, consumers will have less disposable income and slow their discretionary spending. If that exemption is lowered or removed, that will also lead to fewer cross-border sales. And I think this is going to be especially important for my Canadian sellers, as I'm sure many of your sales come from US consumers. Removing this exemption will also affect dropshippers who ship items directly from, say, Chinese manufacturers. And we could also see some supply chain disruptions and longer shipping times. With so many more overseas shipments being subject to import tax, that would likely create a backlog at customs. Again, for now, this isn't an issue, but considering how little attention this exemption got in the conversation, at least that I was seeing, I wanted to make sure you knew what to look out for. And I know this sounds all doom and gloom, but remember what we talked about at the very beginning of this episode. There are a lot of consumers, tens to hundreds of millions of them. Many businesses are successful even in so-called bad economic times. All right, so now that you've got an understanding of what we're dealing with, let's talk about what you can control as a product-based business owner. First and foremost, if you haven't already, just start preparing for the possibility of tariffs. Given the current administration's stance on trade, there's always a chance that they could be introduced or that existing ones could be adjusted. Whether or not that happens and to what extent remains to be seen, but having a plan in place is always a smart move. What that preparation looks like will depend entirely on your unique business model. For my Canadian sellers, this could be a good time to find more opportunities to sell within your own borders. I know that shipping costs within Canada can be prohibitively expensive, and you don't have that same online shopping culture as we do in the US. So this might look like more wholesale opportunities, tapping into your local community, and make sure people know you are a Canadian business. From what I have seen, most Canadian citizens are eager to keep their money at home. Ultimately, the goal here isn't to overcorrect or make drastic moves before anything happens. It's simply about being aware, assessing your options, and keeping flexibility in your strategy so you can adapt quickly if needed. If you import materials or finished goods, even if you've always stayed under that $800 threshold, now is your time to run the numbers and figure out what it would mean for your business if that exemption were removed, if tariffs were imposed, or if both happened. Don't wait until you're in the thick of it. Having a plan now will make all the difference later. That doesn't mean you need to go out and panic buy inventory like customers are doing with eggs at the moment. The reality is, with so much volatility and uncertainty, we're probably going to have to be more reactionary than we'd like to be. And that was a reminder that Katie Hunt of Proof to Product gave me when we were chatting about this. Like, there's only so much we can predict. And unfortunately, some of this is just going to be across that bridge when we get to its situation. But here's the key. I don't want you to be caught off guard. You should at least have a rough idea of what your first moves would be if tariffs hit your products or costs started creeping up. Start by getting a handle on your margins and pricing. If you haven't crunched those numbers recently, now is the time. Over the last few weeks on the podcast, we've been diving into some different things about data, so make sure you check out those episodes. If you are currently running below a 60% gross margin, start making adjustments now. It is far easier to raise prices gradually than to make a massive overnight jump later on. Small incremental increases not only help you protect profitability, but it will also allow you to gauge customer response and make any strategic shifts along the way. Bottom line, know your numbers, stay ahead of the curve, and be ready to pivot. The businesses that take time to prepare now will be the ones in the best position to navigate whatever comes next. This is also a good time to go back to basics. At the core of every successful business, no matter the industry, no matter the economy, are the fundamentals. That means focusing on your own website, your own traffic, and your own email list instead of putting all of your eggs in someone else's basket. Yes, third-party marketplaces like Amazon and Etsy can bring in sales, but I want you to think of them as a bonus. At any moment, fees can increase, algorithms can change, your account could get suspended, or the platform could get banned. The only thing that truly belongs to you is the audience you build and the relationships you nurture on your own platforms. So let's focus on what you can control. Make sure your website is optimized for conversion. Are your best sellers easy to find? Is your shopping process smooth? Do your customers actually want to stay and shop on your website? And if you haven't already, you know what I'm going to say, right? Double down on email. Grow your list, engage your subscribers, and use email to drive repeat sales because you know it is still the highest converting channel you own. And if I sound like a broken record, it's because I am, but that's because these basics, they work. No matter what is happening in the economy, no matter what platform is trending today and gone tomorrow, getting the fundamentals right will always serve you well. So before you go chasing the next big thing, make sure the foundation of your business is rock solid because that is what is going to keep you going. I also want you to lean into your superpower. One of the biggest advantages you have as a small business is your ability to connect with your customers on a deeper, more personal level than any big box retailer or faceless corporation ever could. People buy from people, from businesses they feel a connection with, and that connection, that is your superpower. Now, when we talk about standing out and building relationships, that doesn't mean you have to get political or take a strong stance on every issue. It simply means showing up in a way that makes your customers feel seen, understood, and valued. That could be sharing more behind the scenes, showing the non-business part of your life, doing more live video, leaning into your local community, and hosting a pop-up event. The key here is to lean into what makes you you and build relationships the way only a small business can. When times get tough, people aren't just looking for the cheapest option. They're looking for businesses they trust, brands that align with their values, and experiences that feel personal. And this, my friend, is where you have the chance to really shine. Last but certainly not least is to be ready to experiment. This is another little tidbit that Katie Hunt said when her and I were talking about how we're going to be guiding our people through all of this. You just have to be willing to try new things. Because you are small, this is going to be way easier for you to do than some of the big guys. In most cases, the businesses that can adapt the fastest are the ones that stay ahead. So that might mean testing new pricing strategies, exploring different sales channels, adjusting your marketing approach, or even tweaking your product offerings based on customer demand. The key is to stay open, track your results, and pivot quickly when needed. Not every experiment will be a win. That's okay. The goal is not perfection. It's learning what works and what doesn't so you can make informed decisions moving forward. Think of this as an opportunity to refine your strategy, not as a sign of instability. The more you test, the more data you have, and the stronger your business will be in the long run. And at the end of the day, there's just a lot we can't predict about 2025, but there is a lot we can control. So instead of getting caught up in the chaos, focus on what actually moves the needle in your business. Know your numbers, tighten up your margins, lean into your unique strengths as a small business, and most importantly, stay adaptable. Things may shift, policies may change, and the market may throw us curveballs, but the businesses that succeed are the ones that are prepared, proactive, and willing to experiment. So take a deep breath, make smart moves where you can, and keep showing up. If you want a little extra support navigating your business this year, consider joining us in the Lounge membership. It's the best place to get ongoing support from yours truly, along with a super supportive community. It's also a great place to learn paid meta ads and get direct feedback from our resident Facebook ad strategist, Anna. Yes, they are still working for people, and we expect that will continue. We've actually got a 4-week sprint kicking off on February 17th to help you get your first or next ads set up, which I'm super excited about. I also encourage you to set some boundaries for yourself when it comes to consuming what is going on around us. While I believe you'll be better prepared if you stay aware and engaged, it's also very easy to get caught up. And this is also true when you're engaging with your biz friends. Sometimes negativity just breeds more negativity, and you can unintentionally cause each other to spiral a smidge. So try to put as much energy into controlling the things you can control, and don't forget to get out there and enjoy your life a little bit too. And on that note, I'm out. 2025 is likely going to be a wild ride, but I am super excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you're feeling a bit more positive and ready to go out there and kick some butt in your business. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you on the flip side. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more about growing your e-commerce business, get started with my free resource library at ecommercebadassery.com/free stuff and get an invite to the Lounge, my e-commerce marketing membership. When you're ready for one-on-one support, apply to work with me at ecommercebadassery.com/apply. Before you go, would you do me a quick favor? Leave a rating and review and tap that follow button. This pushes me up the chart so I can support more scrappy e-commerce entrepreneurs just like you. I'm on a mission to reach as many as I can, and I could really use your help. Thanks so much in advance. Until next time, e-commerce friend, stay badass.